Hello and welcome to the skating lesson. I'm Dave Lees.
And I'm Jonathan Byer. Hi, Dave.
Hi. This is the skating lesson. We're going to be discussing everything going on in the figure skating world this weekend and not going on next weekend, or sort of going on, or maybe going on later. So this is this and that. If you are new here, please subscribe below and smash that like button. Jonathan,
I know.
Grand Prix Final is canceled. It's just like when.
It really threw me off. We were supposed to do a preview program right now.
Yes.
Now I'm all confused.
I mean, we knew that we would be discussing the challenge and, the Korean ranking competition and, lots of interesting things happening. But obviously, this is that week before the Grand Prix final. And if you think about the last real Grand Prix finals, I think about there have been some really exciting competitions. In 2017, 2018, the tide really turned, obviously, for Alyona Shevchenko and Bruno Massot. This is what made Tessa Virtue and Scott Moyer switch their free dance. We saw all sorts of things happening in ice dance and in the men's. And we think about 2 years ago, this is when Yuzuru Hanyu was trying so many quad axels in practice and throwing in different quads in competition. So I'm sad. I'm really sad. It's always exhausting covering this, and I'm sure for everyone who's been watching, we've had a long road the last 6 weeks before that with the Challenger Series. It gets earlier every season, but yeah, what are you making? What are you feeling?
So I had two knee-jerk reactions when I just read the headline. And then even someone not competing, someone who was just so excited to see all the showdown, even my heart sank so deeply when I read it. And it was two things that came up. We know that Japan has been erring more on the side of caution than other federations at times, with removing their skaters from the Junior Grand Prix and this sort of thing. So there was an indicator that they might be a bit stricter, like Canada might be, than perhaps some of the other federations. So I was always a little curious about that. But NHK, of course, came and went, and it seemed to be relatively unfazed by COVID protocols and things. So I wondered if they had just been able to organize their thoughts on this a little bit sooner, if they would have moved it, the ISU. So that's a bit unfortunate to me, because the idea of postponing it defeats the purpose. We've lost momentum from the Grand Prix. And again, it's such an indicator and precursor to the Olympic event this season. I don't know who would want to do it afterwards, unless it was just for money or they thought they might have a chance they didn't beforehand. The other thing I was thinking is, what does this make you think about the Olympics?
Okay, so I'm gonna let's do one and other, and I have a lot of thoughts like you. Obviously, I think this is the same thing. It was a similar feeling to Worlds for me. I mean, different because I think the doom and gloom was heading, here. And there was a part before the 2020 Worlds where my company, we weren't, exactly sure when we were going to go. And I remember the timing of it all, realizing, and I remember, preparing and, getting up really early to go skating, and it was still dark out, and listening to, the podcast, The Daily. And it was when I really realized, wait, this thing is coming. And our world is about to shut down, and we don't even realize it, right? And then you think worlds are happening. What about work? What about this? Wait a second, this is going to be really bad. And it all happened. It all started changing in a number of days. Remember when all of a sudden they told us to go buy toilet paper and all of that kind of stuff? And it was hitting at different speeds, right? And in the middle of it, and it's horrible to say, but all the skating fans we really wanted that World Championships to happen. It's like Christmas for skating, right?
Because we almost knew it was also just on the cusp, because Junior Worlds had happened the weekend before, under the buzzer. And so we were can it get in just under the buzzer before things get really out of control here?
And remember, Canada waited, because remember, there's different things based on who canceled it, based on maybe insurance or all sorts of things. So you think about that, and you think about how everyone wanted it so badly, and this Grand Prix final was similar, but in a much more muted way, right? There were obviously the skaters wanted, and you want to move forward. I felt one way about the Olympics, and I've just, ever since the 2020 Olympics were postponed, in the back of my mind, I've always thought, well, what about 2022? It's not that far off. Should they have prepped everyone? At this point, I really think it's almost it's too late for the athletes who they're really in it now. Like they are in the home stretch of preparation. It's even further along than it was for Simone and the athletes from 2020. So you get to a point where if something is going to happen, you think, wait. And I think it's really, irresponsible of the IOC and these bodies to not have planned in advance, especially when it comes to COVID, especially with the Olympics being in China of all places, and with the numbers that no one seems to trust, and there's just so much secrecy around it. I mean, it's a perfect storm. Of course, it's in China during the pandemic and everything, and that's a completely political thing. It has nothing to do with the Chinese skaters, whom we love. It's
of course
a really difficult situation. Obviously, tennis just canceled a number of tournaments in China. Ostensibly because of the situation with the tennis player. You also have to wonder in the back of your mind, does COVID play into that and why they are choosing to go so hard now on China? So all of this stuff weighs in the back of my mind when you see the different politics at bay, and like suddenly human rights, we're going to hold China accountable, a major sports governing body. Is it because of COVID? Is it just because of this? I'm not sure, right? Because that's a really big decision. I don't know, right? And I feel that way for the skaters. I tend to think the Olympics are going to go off unless something really catastrophic happens. It's so hard to know with the variant what is overblowing and not. We happen to live in a country where we have vaccines that are widely available to us. I'm getting my booster next week. Other countries don't have that luxury or haven't had that luxury over time. Other countries' numbers are worse. And it's very interesting. You go up to Massachusetts, everyone's wearing masks. In New Jersey, no one really wears masks that much anymore. Like I was in Pilates and I'm putting my mask on every time, I had been vaccinated, and you find yourself, sometimes, I forgot my mask to the store. I am trying to be better.
It's spot by spot. When I was traveling earlier in like the spring and the summer, when some of the performances were starting to come back, I would land, like when I landed in Nashville or when I landed in Kentucky or even Vegas, quite frankly, I was like, is this still the same time period? Because it was so different in Manhattan than it was in Nashville, than it was in Vegas, than it was in Vancouver when I went to Skate Canada. It's like everywhere you drop yourself, it's a totally different world and how they're handling it. And that must be so confusing for the skaters, although I think most of these competitions seem to have their routine down with we're bubbling this, as long as we help our, put up some signs for Raphael. And like, I just wonder if now that they had the Tokyo Olympics, if all of that sort of bubbling protocol has at least been made so they could transfer it or something. That's what makes me hopeful, is maybe because of the model of Japan this summer, they're able to sort of emulate some of that. I don't want to see it canceled, but of course I don't want it to be irresponsible either.
So I wonder about this ISU in long-term planning. And I don't know how any of this works, and it completely be irrelevant, but I think there's a sense of the Olympic saturation that it's been happening. The fact that every 2 years we have, and social media, we have so many stars and so many people, it almost seems like going to one Olympics and winning it doesn't set you up in a Dorothy Hamill way like it used to before. Suni Lee won, the all-around. She was on Dancing with the Stars. It didn't win her that. She'll be competing at Auburn, and obviously that can extend her life and her presence in the media, but not becoming a big superstar of yesteryear. And obviously Simone's moment in time captured so much oxygen during the Olympics that there's not that much room for everybody else.
Right.
But think about how there was no crowd at the Olympics. They had really poor ratings, especially on NBC, but not the most widely watched event throughout the world. I think there was a sense of distaste and irresponsibility, even that it was going on in Japan, right? And I think people were, mostly respectful of the way Japan was handling the pandemic. How is it going to be when it's in China? We're having it again. Let's see how the virus is. Is there going to be, I don't want to watch an event in China. Why am I watching these athletes? Whether there's a crowd or not there, all these things play in. I certainly think if there's no crowd, which is very possible, at the Olympics, I think that could be something that's changed over time, as we get closer with the rise of the variant. Do people want to watch these empty events? I don't know. So I don't know. And then
sorry to jump in just on that idea, like some of the events we have been watching without audiences, we know We know the novelty of it. We were with it because we're like, let's get through this. So when we're looking at like cardboard cutouts of people and all this sort of stuff, that's one thing. But even as we'll talk about Canada, or the Korean ranking competition, these are closed events, and they do feel like it's a totally different genre of competition. Mm-hmm. It really does. If there's and we're going to talk about this later about PCS, we know that there is an interpretation area, but there's also a performance. So it's kind of hard to perform for no one.
Yeah, and I think we felt that at some of these events. It's a weird feeling, although I think our excitement about seeing skating overrides it to a point.
And that something is something better than nothing.
Yeah, I think that the Olympics are in trouble for a long time, and it's hard to say how is it in trouble. It's $1 billion industry, and what I mean is there are fewer and fewer countries that want to host it. Every country that are the displacement. I think that there certainly needs to be upgrades to the model, where I don't think every country is going to be able to host the Olympics forever, because it's just not sustainable. The amount of waste that goes on to the environment, to everything, it's just not the best decision, rather than having maybe more central locations that rotate or whatever happens, right? And you have to look at, if people aren't watching it in Japan, let's say that the ratings are bad again in China. Does that set a bad precedent for 2024 in terms of what the advertisers are willing to pay? I don't know. I think if you have three, or if the Olympics start to diminish in terms of the ad rates that people are willing to get, and then they pay fewer, that's less money to the IOC, less money to the US OPC, less money to the athletes in the federation. That's why it just makes me nervous that we push these Olympics to happen, and are we really getting the return that we want to on this? Everyone has a different vested interest, but it's
well, so thinking of, as the viewers came into this Summer Olympics, like we'd all been at home watching TV the whole damn time, more than most of us have ever before. So I think also the idea that the people were getting vaccinated, some of the pressure was lifted off of our communities. Like everyone wanted to get the hell outside.
Yes.
And so I also wonder if that was like the last thing I kind of felt like doing was like nestling in my house to watch more television when the weather was nice. I'm curious. I mean, I know that sounds silly, but I have a feeling the cozy nestingness of winter may encourage some more people to tune in.
Yeah, and I think that there's some of the summer events, especially swimming, you think of the crowd in track and field. Obviously gymnastics, the crowd, reacts to these routines. Skating, obviously there's a crowd involvement, but skiing, not really crowd dependent, although we could find some people to bang the bells and make it sound like it's fun, like woo, but that's always like the greatest sound. But some of these events, obviously not as crowd dependent, although, or you can distance people perhaps more than you could in an indoor swimming pool. So the environment does matter, and it's a sad time. And I think there's so much we don't know about this variant. On one hand, you read one thing and it seems to be really bad. Then it says that if you have the vaccine, it's not bad. But at the same time, I personally know more people in the last week or two that have gotten COVID and gotten seriously ill or died from it than I have in about a year. But then winter is coming as well. We're coming, and people are inside more in the spread. So it's a lot to weigh in and skating in the middle of it.
and who knows? Again, like I didn't know about this variant a month ago, and we still have a couple months before the Olympics. Like, what else is to be discovered between now and then? Like, it's just a question that makes my heart break for some of these athletes. But like you say, I think most of them are now all in it anyway. So where we were talking about the gymnastics before, about some people almost like wondering whether to start revving up or not. These people have revved up. They're in full-blown mode. So there's, I would think, no stopping their motivation or momentum now.
And you can't think that way. If you start to think that way, you are so out of it, right? And I was talking to a friend who's on holiday on ice, and it's interesting, they just went back to performing after a long period, not performing during COVID. They were performing in one country, then they were supposed to go to another country, and then they're not going to be performing for a number of weeks because of how different the situation is from country to country. So I do think that in the US, we are very lucky that things are very open and we're able to live our lives, due to the vaccinations. But it's not the same everywhere. So you have to think about all the different countries. I don't think China would cancel the Olympics. I think it would be the rest of the world should something happen. I don't know. I read an article that scared the bejesus out of me a couple of weeks ago that was saying that in Pennsylvania, the deer all have it, and scientists believe that humans gave it to deer. Now, where my parents live, there's like deer in everyone's backyard.
Of course, yeah. Eating all your landscaping.
Oh, constantly. Debbie's yelling at the deer like it's going to matter a damn thing, right?
Yeah.
Right. I stayed with my parents during COVID.
Oh wait, Dave, this is a nice tie-in. I got a new vase. Can you see it? It's all deer.
Oh,
yeah. So don't tell your mom.
Yeah.
Okay.
Birthday this week. Happy birthday, Debbie. Oh, and happy birthday, Galina Zmievskaya. Yes.
Now let's think about that, Dave. Your two maternal forces in your life are one day apart. I love that. Okay.
Frightening. Frightening.
Yeah. Let me write that down in my notes.
No, I always love when the people write like, you hate Russia. You hate Russians. And I'm like, do you know how much money we pay to the Russian people?
How much I sought out their help specifically? Yeah.
And then there are times that Galina will say that she is Russian. And then I will remind her that she is Ukrainian. When she goes, Dave, how are the American skaters doing? You know, she's shading. Oh, Russia, you know Russia will be 1, 2, 3. They allow 4 Russian girls, 1, 2, 3, 4. I say, Galina, how are those Ukrainian girls doing? Very situation.
Then you should just respond the same. Yeah.
I always think, like, you know, maybe we don't love the Russian coaches when they're yelling at us in the rink, but when we're smiling on the top of the podium, we love them so much, so much.
And as we've established, life is about smiling on a podium, never off. Yeah.
That is what matters. Okay.
That's right. Oh my gosh. Oh my. There were even some rumblings, you know, those like skating conspiracy theorists that were like, oh, it's Japan canceling because they're intimidated because Russia was going to blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh my God. When
you know how much money they lose out on, the Japanese Skating Federation? And that's the thing, is that obviously if they're rescheduling to the end of the season, it's about money that's coming in for the ISU, which has lost out on competitions over the last several seasons, and Japan. So,
and the skaters, because of the prize money there.
Yeah, but you got to think, the top skaters in the world who are going to be at this event, many of them are invited to shows. And many of them are going to be exhausted after the World Championships. They could potentially earn significant guaranteed money going on shows around the world, or getting into that mode, or whatever is happening in their lives. They may not have the interest to go to a Grand Prix final. That doesn't matter at this point.
That doesn't matter, and would be after Worlds. Is that what they were talking about?
Megan and Eric would go. She would have gone. She would have won. She would have done a quad. You know, lots.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Gotten the money, gotten the record. Do you know what I mean? Gotten the resume credit, like 100%. I think like the Worlds after the Olympics. I mean, this could be an opportunity for someone. Probably a lot of the alternates, if they do end up doing that, would be moved up. Or do you just call it a watch?
Which could be interesting for us to watch, and we're going to watch it either way. Maybe change the format. Do like an old pro-am where you do a technical and an interpretive program. 3 triples in the free. 3 quads for Russian ladies. You know, like you can. I mean, it would be a glimpse at the future. But think about, Jonathan. Think about how much money Eteri lost. Okay, David Spletnikov was too tired this week to be funny, but he did plan a video, and it was going to be called Eteri Tutberidze versus the Omicron virus. Okay, let's calculate for 40%. What places do you think that the ladies would have been at the event? What were your predictions?
I think because she was going to go 1 with Valieva. I think she was going to go 2 with Anna. I think she was going to go 4 with Maya.
4 with Maya, not 5.
Because I think because Tuktamisheva I had as 3rd in my head.
Where do you have Cowrie? Cowrie 5th?
I think Cowrie might have been 5th.
Okay.
Just based on Maya's numbers, if she was clean, which it's a gamble, but 4th or 5th for Maya.
Kosternaya 6th?
I sort of thought so.
You know what? She's got new tattoos, new lips, new hair, everything. So they were on that TV. By the way, they dressed them all up in like glam. Professional, we saw them get their hair and makeup done. Why was Maya dressed like she was Peter Pan in the school play? Like, no one is helping this girl. Okay.
It's so funny because sometimes when they do those appearances, they're so different than their packaging on the ice that it takes me a second to identify them, because they all have so much hair. but you don't realize that when they're skating.
How do you think Tarasa Morozov would have been? First or second? Because they're an Eteri team.
I'm going to say second. I mean, it's such a gamble, but I think I could have seen a second.
See, so that's another 18 grand. So you get 25 grand for first. It used to be worth 100 grand in 1998.
I know. When it was relevant.
Inflation. Oh my God. Yeah. Talk about a dime.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
And people are like, but it's so popular in Japan and Russia. Yeah, well, the money used to be $100,000 for first place in 1997-98, the season.
Right.
What is that worth now? Okay.
And that's when they made him do stupid shit too. You know what I mean? I going back to some of them like after in like the late 90s.
That was after, but 97-98, we got to watch it over Christmas. It's a real deal, honey.
I remember Frank Carroll was like, who would even want to do that? Who cares about that? And I was like, I would for 100 grand. I would for 10 grand.
Harry lost out on 40% of 25,000, 25% of 18,000 for Sherbakova, 40% of 18,000 for Tarasova Morozov, 40% of the bullshit money for 6th place and 4th place, and then the juniors. I mean, come on. This is so mean to do to a Eteri. Think of the Louis Vuitton jacket she could have had at the Olympics.
This is a financial setback, yeah.
The Christmas presents that Deanna Davis could have gotten from her mother, and not just that Olympic gold medal that is coming. I mean, this is terrible to do.
Yeah.
Poor Eteri. She has been working so hard.
Literally.
Okay. Think about COVID. She would have swept the world championships. Now Omicron, and listen, why not just have the event in Hrustalny? Okay.
Well, that's what I mean. You could
maybe
just
the Russian vaccine, 60% effective. Mishin's mask covers 40% of his chin. That is 100% safe. Okay. I mean, come on. This is ridiculous. Oh my God.
And his percentage is pretty high compared to some others.
6,000 for 4th place, 4,000 for 5th, 3,000 for 6th. I mean, Eteri would have gotten at least
that's some chump change.
More than that. I mean, we're looking at like 25K for Eteri. And really, who deserves it more? Right. And then think about it. They have all these contracts. Like Anna has a huge contract with the bank, the one where she's holding her teddy bear. Because, when I'm banking, I think about holding my stuffed animal.
Right. It's her piggy bank. Yeah. Okay.
Think about like the money Valyeva has bringing in. And then Eteri has a bank that sponsors them. You get bonuses for all of like the medals you win at these bigger competitions like nationals and worlds and Olympics and probably the Grand Prix final. Think about the amount of money that is on the table.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and again, a lot of this ladies showdown was going to be really interesting. It was going to inform a lot and be a huge factor, I think, in deciding Russian nationals, their Olympic team, and also huge just to see how it was going to play out at the Olympics. You know who I think it's terrible that this is canceled. No one wins because this is canceled, but I think it provides some rest and probably stress relief for all of the ice dancers.
Yes.
If I were an ice dancer, even though I could have proven something, I could have also done, I don't know. I think that the showdown will wait until the Olympics is a little bit more exciting.
For Europeans.
Yeah, minus all the North Americans. So like the whole list of 5 in particular.
For the North Americans, it's like a
yeah, and we won't see it. We see little bits. But all of them
on
together,
edge. There's so much about Smart and Diaz on edge, and they're great to watch. But what about like Hubble and Donahue versus Chuck and Bates? We never see them in the same scenes interacting. You notice that on that show?
Right. When they call in.
Hugo Chouinard is such an angel. When he's just changing the music, he's so happy getting to them for the next morning.
No problem. Yeah.
That's how he is, though, like in real life. He's the best.
That's amazing. That's amazing. It's really interesting that they're doing that. Like
Matthew's very quiet. So like when Matthew, when he was sketching for me, and I was like, okay, then I would like this with a little bit, and he's like, and I'm like, do you hate it? Do you not hate it? Like what is
talk to me? Yeah.
But he was like thinking, he's the Quebecois are different people. He's also an angel, but
but quietly so.
Artiste,
Okay.
Yes.
That's funny.
So yeah. I told him I want to look like what Madison Chalk and Tessa Virtue would look like if people thought they cared about their appearance. That's how good I want my new costume to look. Okay.
That is a challenge. That is a gauntlet thrown. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Don't worry. You pay by the rhinestone, Jonathan. So, you know,
okay.
Maybe I shouldn't have made that joke. Okay.
That's right. That's right. It's going to come back to bite you.
Oh my God. But think about if the Olympics were postponed a year. Let's just go down. Who do you think probably is going to have a Simone moment and just be like, you know what? It didn't work for her and I'm bowing out.
You know,
who do you think would like have
discipline?
A nervous breakdown? Let's go discipline by discipline. Pairs everyone scared of.
That they would just be like, forget it, I'm out.
Yeah.
Well, Tarasova and Morozov have been trying to say, forget it, I'm out forever, but no one will let them. So I feel like Eteri would not let them.
She would just send them to more competitions until they became consistent, right?
Exactly. Obviously, my concern would be Sway and
Han.
Yes, not Han, but Han. Sway and Han, I that's who I would be.
No, I think China would try to make them do it, but I don't know if it would be physically possible for them to.
In this interest, I think a lot of skaters that we'll probably bring up in this scenario would be tempted to leave, but certain federations or coaches will not let them.
KMT would quit before she even finished reading the press release. I mean,
yeah, she already has. Yeah.
She's done, right?
Yeah. 100%. Vanessa.
I get a quiet rage from her Instagram. Do you?
I just get quiet rage from her in general.
But with a smile.
Yeah. The
like when Kristen Chenoweth, it's like Kristen Chenoweth has to reunite with Idina Menzel.
I was at that Tony's. You were like, "Ooh, it is icy frozen in here." Yeah, it's funny.
Okay, not since Tanya and Nancy sat down with James Brown did people have that much tension. Okay,
not since that awkward hug on the warm up. Yeah.
Oh man. All right. So, in the ice dance event, people point out that Papadakis and Cizeron have been taking off their skates in the kiss and cry. Like they've been untying their skates as soon as they finish.
Meaning they think that they don't feel comfortable, like they're uncomfortable, and so they. Yeah,
but people have talked about the fact that they would do that as like a psychological thing. Like they are out of here. Like they are just like done. Like you are just like off your skates as you're sitting there. Like you. I mean, they have to put them back on for awards, but you are just pieced out, right? And
interesting.
So people.
I would just think it's like trying to be more comfortable.
Well, you are, but at the same time, you don't see skaters do it, right?
Yeah, it's true. On occasion I have, but sometimes it's indicated also that something's a little off with the foot or with the boot or something that they need to
just think because we know that they've had so many struggles over the last years. People read a lot into it. It's interesting. Why are they taking their skates off in the kiss and cry? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, depending on the angle.
They could get a new free dance, which would be great for everyone, but I think...
I like this one, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Okay. I just,
would they stay on? I know they probably would again because momentum is on their side, but I just think knowing that
I think the audio recording of the screaming and crying that would happen would be next level. Okay, to try to force them back into the rink, Marie France's hair would fall out. I don't know.
Yeah.
Turn gray in an instant.
They would be the only ones I would worry. I think everyone else could hold on one more year.
What about Hubble?
I think
they would hold on, but I think that it would be. I would watch that Instagram heavily to see what happens. Right.
Yeah. I think they would because it's only one season, even though no one.
But I certainly hope they wouldn't cancel it until we have one program to go between the French. Maybe they could cancel Europeans mid-European championship, right when Smart and Diaz and Hurtado are tied.
Okay. Yeah, of course, yeah.
That would be perfection. Yeah. That would be the moment to cancel, right?
Right, exactly.
It's a dead heat. So, what are the times
for
that? Do we know? Are there? I don't know.
How are we doing it? Yeah, it's going to be Europeans.
Men's, I would worry about Nathan.
Yeah.
Obviously, using another year to get the quad axle. So Yes.
But I would think Shoma would be a tough hold on.
We don't know what his plans are. It would be
Yeah.
great for someone like Yuma, who's coming up, or Shun Sato, or Kazuki Tomoto to really, get
Does
things.
it help someone like Kolyada to have another year with Mishin, or are we really
Switching that program? My goodness, can we all, can we switch the program? But where is my lighter? He looks so miserable doing Schindler's List. Change the energy. Change energy. Eteri, he is not your favorite person because he is messing up this team medal. Get them to switch back to Nureyev. Get them to switch back, okay? All right. How about the ladies event? This is the fun one.
That's the tough one because it's interesting because obviously my mind first wanders to Tuktamisheva. But then I think,
no, I'm not right about
just the kind to stay in. She is exactly the
honey
one.
badger.
Like, oh yeah.
No.
I think Valieva, the clock. Anna, I think would have to almost be gone. And I don't.
Anna would try to will
she's-
herself. Whether she had to finish the rotation 1.5 turns on the ice, she would still go for that quad flip. But I don't know if it would be possible. I think
a year later. Yeah.
Think about it. Valieva getting taller by the day.
Yeah.
Daria's injured. Trusova, I mean, she's already been injured trying all of these quads. Who knows what it could be.
And
good
if
for
she
her.
comes back too soon, that year could be tough to hold on.
Maya, who knows?
Could behoove Maya. Who knows? Where Maya was last year to this year has been so astronomical, that rise.
But Eteri's top, the funniest thing here is they didn't plan in advance. If the Olympics are postponed for a year, who's Eteri's top junior star? Sofia Akatieva, who is 6 days too young if the Olympics are postponed a year. 6 days. They would have to go with Petrosian. They would kick Kosternaya out yesterday to prep this girl for the Olympics. You think Kosternaya is going to last another year with them, with the butting of heads?
Right. No
Come
way.
on.
No way.
She's already planning a YouTube channel, and I'm already planning on watching it. So, I mean,
she has stuff to say that I would like to hear.
Does Terry get 40% of it? Who knows? She needs to be smart and strategic. All right.
Okay.
Vitova gave another interview about her injuries and how she can't do flip or Lutz. I wonder, is she going to wind up coaching when these new rinks are finished being built for Sambo? I think she would be the perfect mini Eteri. I think anything that Evgenia did, Eteri would have done as well.
Yeah.
If Eteri were coached by Eteri in 2018, would she have ghosted her? And then gone to Brian Orser, the coach of the men's Olympic champion? And maybe come back. And
but again, I really believe because of that,
she is
Terry's
spiritual daughter. It's probably why they butt heads so much. This is
exactly. I see. And now if I'm a Terry, I'm like, there, you got all the information on how they prep people. Tell us. Like, now we have all the information. Like, I don't know, it could be interesting, but that's hard for an athlete. Like we saw with Eteri is very much obviously about Eteri and her brand, but in general, some of the great coaches like a Mishin or someone like that are quite selfless. So an ego-driven skater.
A coach in skating who is selfless? Who?
Mishin. Like, or I think where they put their performer energy away and put out coach energy.
Wait. I have never seen a Mishin student with performer energy who was born and raised. Okay.
No. Like Mishin himself, I'm saying. Like, he didn't carry himself as like a former pairs competitor. He was just there as like a guy giving technique. I don't know. For Medvedeva to make it about her student and not her in the beginning would probably be tough because she's still so freshly a performer,
I think she would have all of that Eteri energy into those students. Oh, it's perfection. It's perfection. Okay. I think we could put her with like the 5-year-old girls, the ones that like skate to the Little Mermaid, and she would be getting them doing double combos, willing it out of each other. Okay.
Double on the warm up. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Come on. I have never seen someone so right for Sambo 70 than Evgenia Medvedeva, the coach. Okay.
Because did we ever hear like Polina Tsutskaya had talked about joining their team? And
she's there.
She is there. Okay.
Also, Arseny Fedotov landed a Valieva one-arm triple axel. I mean, it was a miracle. At some event, it was gorgeous. The
whole program was gorgeous. He's such a a lovely, like expansive performative skater at such a young age. That
I know that triple axel at a man though is very frightening, especially when they, that technique. Woo!
Yeah. Agreed.
But obviously, Eteri is going to have to bring them all back. Okay.
Might as well.
You really pissed her off. I don't know. They all forgot to wish Eteri's sister a happy birthday on Instagram. Now, if you are not following Eteri's sisters, you are really not following skating. Okay. Jonathan, that is Andy Cohen's next reality show. The Real Housewives are fading. I mean, keeping up with the Tutberidze sisters is like next level. When you see Eteri's sister, Angelina, with the birthday cake and the fireworks coming off, and like Marina and all of them forgot to wish her a happy birthday this year. Some years you could tell they all get like birthday posts for each other, and some years they don't. Now, Marina is always congratulating Eteri on Instagram. The other sisters seem bitter and jealous. They seem bitter and jealous. Not only that, Marina is congratulating Diana Davis. And when Evgenia came back, they liked her. But now that they don't like Evgenia after she gave that interview over the summer, because, you know, she doesn't train at Sambo 70 anymore, they make her train at their rink, but they still get 40% of her. You know, she did not get a birthday post this year. I'm just saying, you could see a lot. You got Marina Hoffman, like one of the stars of the family. But Eteri's older sister, you're like, which one seems like the biggest nightmare? You know? Oh.
It must be quite a household.
The amount of personalities with those sisters.
Yeah. Imagine coming up in that. That's what I always thought about, like David Sedaris and Amy Sedaris, like just growing up together in the same house. You're like, that had to have been an unwielding energy. And I feel the same here. Like,
and which stories in those books were accurate and which ones weren't? You know,
most were accurate. Yeah.
The best is the Holiday on the Rocks version with that Dinah, the Christmas whore. I don't know. Was that true?
Yes, it's called Holidays on Ice, actually.
Yeah.
And then my favorite, they're just all the little vignettes. Everyone likes the story where he's working as like the Christmas elf for Santa in the mall. But I love the story where he writes a full-fledged scathing review of like a children's Christmas play, like a second grade Christmas pageant. And he's writing like he's a ruthless like New York Times reviewer. It's hilarious.
His stuff over time hasn't been as good, but in his day, You Talk Pretty One Day, Holidays on Ice, Naked.
Those were good stuff.
Those were good stuff. Yes.
I was like, speaking of good stuff, but I didn't know how to make the transition because I didn't know what good stuff we would want to transition to next.
Well, let's talk about these Russian proposals for the articles. Okay. You're not reading sports.ru. Again, you're not watching skating. Just get that Google Chrome translation browser. You'll get like, 90% of what's happening. So the Russians love to talk about the age rule. Right? They get quotes from everyone. It must get so many clicks because they can get the quotes that we're dominating. How dare they try to switch it? This week, it made me frickin' pee. Okay. It made me frickin' pee, Jonathan. Okay. Because we find out, do you know which country proposed to raise the age from 15 on July 1st to 17?
It's that Sonia Henny, isn't it?
It's Norway, right? Right, which just random, right?
Like, powerful federation from the 30s.
And you get like Yagudin giving quotes like, Norway, what skaters do we even have? Maybe we should.
Why is Russia's
biathlon?
When they ask these athletes for these quotes and all this sort of stuff, the first thing they do is just like slam the person, so the idea should have no warrant, like no time given to it whatsoever. It's like, okay, hold on. Do you know what I mean? Like, let's just hear what the proposal is.
But do you know who's for it? If Yagudin's against it, who's for it?
You think Eteri is for it?
No, Plushenko.
Oh, of course. Yes, of
you know why Plushenko's for it? Because he knows Eteri's girls will be screwed, right?
They're all gone if you do that. 100%. She's now a junior coach.
It wouldn't be till 23, 24, so there'll be time. But anyway, but he believes that his girls can last till 17.
I believe that too.
And that her technique won't. And that's why
I believe that.
Reading this.
Yeah.
And how long can you keep a skater looking like a 10-year-old boy for? Like how long can the body do that before that technique no longer works and you have to jump from your legs? I believe that there was a video called Team Tutberidze, a decade of dominance, that mapped this out once upon a time. And
I remember that video.
yes, Jonathan. And
one of your finest, as many
Yeah.
Russian coaches told you.
But yes, this was, think about it. Of course, Bushenka is, and more of the, like, Urmanov was like more logical about it, that he doesn't want to see skaters be one and done. Again, he's from the Mission school, but you can just see there are others that are saying we'll win no matter what, which may well be the case. Because do you think it would help the US or Canada to keep skaters that wouldn't get a chance to even compete until 17 or 18 at the World Championships? I don't know that it's as much of a benefit as people think it is to the US based on the state of skating.
Yes, I think if you change the age limit, you'll still have Russian dominance. They'll just be older Russians, and that might come from different coaches or something. I don't think that like changing an age limit, you still have Tukdemisheva, the top of that heap, and other people that would be eligible. And they may have trained some of the younger skaters a little bit different, knowing that they need to last a little bit longer. But I don't think suddenly Karen Chen rotates just because the age limit elsewhere has gone up.
Well, I think the biggest problem in the US is funding, right? US and Canada, that you have to be independently wealthy to be a figure skater. And the pool shrinks every time you add a year, right? Because there's no incentive, you can't compete in college for figure skating, and they don't have an NCAA where people are getting their educations paid for. At a certain point, if you're not competitive, most people move along, right? And either they tour or they get an education, and they see the writing on the wall. If you move it, I don't know that people are going to stay in magically longer, right? If they still see one country at the top, it becomes, well, you're never going to compete with them. What are you getting out of this? You go to the Olympics, you're going to be 12. Like, yes, it's happy for us, but you're not going to go on the ice capades like you used to and make that money back. Like, it's not really happening. So what do you do unless you're one of the top few? So I don't know that it's necessarily as big of a help unless they did put something in like, collegiate skating and, made incentives, which frankly, the federation should be working on to keep people in the sport longer. And that's beyond a collegiate championships, because it has to be an incentive to stay in the sport, to keep training, right? And to go and things like that. So
to justify the investment. I mean, quite frankly.
So I think it's very challenging,
So when a federation like Norway comes forward with that, like obviously they're just the country that like submits the paperwork. One would assume like
another country's behind it.
Yeah, I
like what? Imagine. Obviously, Norway is not a Russian judge. Who is it? Is it Canada? Is it the US behind it? Like, who is it?
But again,
this is to avoid repercussions for a judge, in my opinion. Okay,
Right. But I truly believe that like any fear that it's anti-Russia and pro anywhere else, I would just ask the people barking that, like, who in particular do you think would suddenly start winning just because, again, I believe you would replace the Russian girls under 17 with Russian girls who were over 17, women, ladies, whatever the right term is.
Women now.
Women, that these women would still be dominating.
Yeah, obviously it would take generations to even switch. I think that certain people in the short term might do better. I think a couple more medals for Japan, a couple more medals for Korea, a couple more medals for North America, but I don't think substantively it would change. It would be, 6 years, 8 years before we really start to see any sort of shift.
But again, knowing if this now goes to a vote at the ISU, where, as we've discussed, like many Russian-friendly federations are vote, and if they feel it is an anti-Russian movement, which I don't believe it is, but if they believe it is, they'll vote it down in a second. It'll never get
Russia is making clear that they are against it, even though you have other coaches who are saying it's inevitable, they're just trying to attack Russia. I mean, they have quotes from everyone about this. Tarasova, Peter Chernychev, Ina Kucherenko, like Alexei Romanov, Alexander Zhul. Like, you could go to every day. They have new quotes about this. It's clearly something that's top of mind in the Russian press and the sports press. So
maybe that's because they're a lot of their contenders right now are younger. But again, this isn't they wouldn't do it tomorrow and they can't skate. you know
And
what I
they
mean?
point out that no one cared. Well, no one cared when the Americans won. Well, there was backlash against when Tara Lipinski was winning. I mean, they had those quotes from Carlo Fassi way back when they got rid of figures. So it's been an argument for a long time, but that's
yeah.
You know.
And now that Carlo's prophecy has 100% come true,
Mhm.
like now they're trying to figure out how they can adjust it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is correct. Yeah. Other things is that they want to split the panel into having technical judges and component judges, which I think the theory of that is fine, but how are they going to pay for all these judges? These events are expensive. Right?
It has such potential to the idea in some ways. When we've gone back and done our Patreon judging, I have to be honest, sometimes I had to pause. Sometimes I had to go back because like, if I am so looking for the transition in and out of a jump and you're so this, remember it's like when Sandra said, if you're watching and you just keep darting back up to that technical box in the corner, how could you say you're watching the program? How could you be taking in a performance if you're analyzing what's getting what grades of execution and whatnot? So we know that the PCS is not judged fairly along the different categories. We've always said that like the skating skill mark, as you said, hooks the number and just kind of fills in the rest. So if you had people that really were trained technically in the qualifications of PCS and only had to focus on that, I don't know, it seems great, but what are you talking about? Are you reducing the number of each judging panel? It's so expensive already to have all those judges. Do you reduce the numbers? Do you literally split the number in half?
I think they would talk about adding judges and then splitting. I just can't see it passing in terms of budgeting.
It's that many more hotel rooms, that many more flights, that many.
Think about how many empty junior Grand Prix events we see happening, senior B events where there's not a lick of audience in there. I don't know. Maybe it'll pass. I mean, I'm not against it in theory. I'm just
in theory. Same thing, and that's what they would always talk about, like synchro and things like that. Like most people, when they talk about adding synchro to the Olympics, don't have an opposition to it, but the logistics of it, people, start talking about. Like, there's so much involved with each idea that causes like a huge mountain of complications.
Yeah. Yes, and then the other thing is that Alla Shahovskaya, the judge that has been involved with the block judging in '98, she was hugging Adelina Sotnikova, to stand
after she called her performance.
One who in that book Tears on Ice, like she was working and making sure that the right team got. She threatened people for the ice dance at the Nationals in Russia one year. Also,
like you do. As is tradition. Yeah. Okay.
She was for Angelika Krylova and with her old.
You know what? Same. Okay.
Anyway, the ISU lets her lead a work group. Like, how does this happen? Right? Yes, we are going to have Didier run the ethics committee, and we are going to have Alla do the reforms.
Well, remember, Didier almost got ISU president that one year, well after all of his scandals were known.
Like, come on. So Alla wants to get rid of the transition mark and interpretation. I mean,
so let's talk this out. Yeah, because when you were mentioning that to me, we were thinking like transition mark is too important. It's too important, and they claim that's what IJS was supposed to really enhance, was like jumps coming out of nowhere. And you see someone like a Jason Brown, and you see the magic of what transitions can be. I'm torn though, because often that like cluttering of a program and where we miss that individuality, to me, it's people obsessively trying to chase that transition mark that is often the culprit. So I'm somewhere in between on this subject. You don't want open programs that just seem blank or like they're killing time, but I miss a moment in the 80s when you watch someone stalk in the rink and getting my excitement up to see what they're about to go ahead and try.
It's in one respect, yes, I would love simpler marks that you could go back to the 6-0 days. I hate how there's like formulas and exactly what the transitions are going to look like for every single person from certain rinks. However, I don't think that you can go back. Like, I don't think that you can get rid of transitions and just have Arina Slutskaya going into her jump straight down the ice,
right,
and not deduct, unless they're from Russia, because that doesn't matter with the marks. But I think, I don't think that you can do that, because, and I understand that the men don't have transitions. None of the top men, they're doing these quads, Trusova in the ladies event, they don't have the transitions because they really, most of them don't have the ability to do that, plus the quads. So on one hand, I understand, but if you are marking transition, I mean, they overlook it for the men anyway when you look in their marks, but if you're doing it honestly, can you go back to simpler marks and not calculate transitions in? I don't know. Interpretation, right. I think it's different, all right? Like, I think that one mark for performance, whether it be like the choreography and the interpretation, those start to like all performance execution, they all
do
overlap.
So let's talk about that for a second, because when we first started like breaking down IJS and judging PCS and all that sort of stuff, like I always ran into the issue. There was the performance column, which I sort of understood, because that's what they all shoved down our throats when they were like, that's why Tara won. It was a performance execution situation. And I was like, okay.
But not a choreography situation, right?
Not a choreography situation. But where does one, like, interpretation versus performance? But we're saying the interpretation mark is not the choreography mark, because the choreography mark is kind of the composition mark, is it not?
Yeah. So I think it would have to be, I mean, you'd have to really
look at it. It does seem redundant. I could go with a choreography mark under composition and a performance mark at how well you did it.
What if you combined the skating skills with the transitions? Because are those not really, I mean, obviously there's like the strength of the knee bend and the crossover, but what if they made a mark that was like skating skill? Because someone's skating skill and their ability to do a quality transition into an element versus just doing a transition, I think are very different things. And I think that you could theoretically combine those and say Patrick Chan has the ability to do, you know, a rocker counter this into a triple jump, and it looks great, and because he has great skating skill, and the transition is part of that. They all overlap.
You bring up an interesting point, because then Patrick's jump is also getting a higher GOE as a result of that transition. But then it is also being judged as a transition in and of itself. Like, so you're right. Should it be part of the skating skills? And quite frankly, should it be part of the choreography? Because if your choreography, as you present it, has no transitions, it seems lacking, because maybe that would be one of the bullet points, that choreography needs a great deal of transitions as opposed to judging it on its own. Same thing with the interpretation mark. If it's a performance / interpretation, that to me is who had the moment, like a Midori Ito selling you big energy, even though it's not artistic, but you're having a moment with it. And then there's interpretation, which could score just as well as who's hearing the music and emoting it in a way that's totally different. I want to give them extra points.
Although weird to see Russians talk about getting rid of interpretation, because Jonathan, Evgenia Medvedeva at 17 years old gave us a performance where her husband was going off to work at 9/11 and she didn't know if he was going to live or die. When she picked up that phone, if that wasn't interpretive, I don't know what is, okay? If that wasn't wrong, I don't want to be right. You know, like I just come on, all right? This is just ridiculous.
But let's say as she's answering that phone and giving him a briefcase or whatever that whole thing was, then if you love it or don't, then you could put that mark down in the composition choreography.
Well, they don't judge the quality of the interpretation, they judge that it exists.
Well, that's the thing. And to me, I am not interested in it if it only exists and doesn't enhance my enjoyment. Then what's the point of all of it if it doesn't add up to anything? So also, if you felt her pantomime that day of the briefcase and the telephone was so exceptional.
And the jump rope in the short program.
You could feel the wind of the jump rope against you in the seats. Let's give her a huge performance score. If you're like, wow, she phoned in the jump roping part today, then maybe you don't give such a high score. I don't know. I think there's actually, I go back sometimes in 2014, you and I did, Lord, we're so elderly. We did a show after, I think it was Cinquanta, was like, let's cut the short program. And inevitably we were all like, cut the short program. This is ridiculous. And sometimes ever since, I was like, actually, was that the nuttiest idea you'd ever heard? Now that, especially in the ladies, the athletes can't even get the higher score in the technical program. They have to wait for the free program. Like sometimes I am aware of my reluctance to people trying to mess with it, but sometimes like, actually this transition interpretation thing is not maybe as ridiculous as I thought when I first heard it.
Yeah. Galina yelled at me for not liking change. She's like, what do you eat for breakfast? Do you eat the same thing for lunch and dinner? I'm like, yes, it's very Frank Carroll of me. I know. Like I heard the same, but like,
it's very Maribel Vince and Owen. That's what it is. Yeah.
I think the fact that the ladies aren't doing quads, it's made the short program seem silly.
Because it's anything
that's for the ladies, not for the men, but for the ladies. That rule I think has to change. Come on.
Yeah. And that's ridiculous. Yeah.
Well, it's becoming a joke. I mean, it encourages ladies to learn triple axels, but that's all it's doing, right? And it's silly to me when you watch, oh, they're going to do their easy program and this. The whole thing is just, it's become really strange, and I don't understand the logic for that anymore.
Yeah. But that's interestingly enough, in all of the resolutions and propositions you're talking about, I don't hear that one. I don't hear them saying, why are we legitimately trying to hold the ladies back technically by not allowing them to do these amazing things that they're capable of doing?
That's what I would push for. Come on. Trusova should be able to do a quad lutz in the short program. Done.
Great.
Right?
If we've got Norway doing the one, somebody call Liechtenstein and you tell them that they have got to put forth this resolution. Yeah. Okay.
Other hilarious thing is that the Russian press, Megan Duhamel, are you listening? The Russian press is starting to talk about how they want to add back the quads, twists, and throws to the competition. Do you know which country?
Now that Megan's gone,
do you know which country was against the twists and throws?
They weren't against twists and throws. They were against Megan. They were against Megan.
No, not just Megan. What country can do both a throw quad sow and a quad twist? Sway and Pan. Okay.
No.
And who was getting hurt working on the quads? Tarasova and Morozov. Nina Mosher was against it, and now the Russian press is for it. Because now they've got rid of a generation of athletes who had worked on that ahead of time, so now we can reintroduce it. Now, amazing. Exactly. You have got to say, Russia is doing the most constantly at changing the numbers, changing the weight of the quads, the twists and
well, it's the lack of uniformity that in one discipline.
We're not afraid of Russia. I mean, don't hate the player, hate the game. Okay, like that's hysterical. Yeah. Okay,
they're playing the game to promote their athletes, and you can't blame them for doing that. But like, it is unusual that like we have watched all these pair programs this weekend and throughout, and we're still seeing all throw sows and loops, and you're like, why has this stagnated? We were before watching Megan do quad lutzes. That's where we should be with this.
They didn't like Megan, but by the time that rule actually got applied, it really hurt Sway and Han. It made them not go for the throw quads. So.
Right.
And it came down to, is she going to land the triple sow?
Right.
Right.
Which now we're in the 90s again. Yeah. So
anyway, just.
Because a lot of these teams are ready to go with those. You can tell by most of these throws are too high anyway. I find and the poor woman in the air is like having to take such brunt. She needs another chance to rotate again. Yeah.
I will say, watching the Korean ranking competition as we move along, I was left feeling that a couple main thoughts just before we go. Their technique is so good on their jumps as a country, right?
Mm-hmm.
They are like learning a quad toe away from challenging, right? To really being in the medals and not being 6th and 7th. Because they think that their skaters are very talented and very technically adept, especially they've perfected the triple lutz, triple toe. I mean, that they own that combination.
The quality of triple combos coming out, Yelim Kim in particular, she never does that opening triple usually where I don't go, oh, like that is so like, a moment,
except for Eunsoo. She is the only one that seems to deliberately not do it.
Right.
Or Eunsoo. Like she looks like she's trying harder, but she's just gotten taller and it's gotten harder for her.
Yeah, because some of the edge jumps in the short program were more impressive than we have seen from her in a while. But of course, doubling out on the combo and then having an issue with the double axel. But again, she's a real performer and a real dancer and an artist.
She has the most star quality of all.
But without an audience, that's hard to get motivated also.
They do have an issue in the Korean skating that holds them back compared to Russia, and it is in the interpretation field. And I think it's two things. They're not as performative facially as engaging. I know David Wilson said very inarticulately about it being cultural, that when Yuna spent more time in North America, people do the fake smiles and they're, that it's just different, right? And cultures being more reserved. I don't know if that's true or not. I haven't spent time in Korea. He said it. It was his view as a choreographer who went back and forth. I don't know.
But sometimes, Dave, it's as much as the projection, which I love.
That's what I'm talking about.
Because this in here and looking at the feet and closed down. Now, in this ranking competition, again, there's just like cement walls everywhere. So there's nowhere to look up to. That Angelika Krylov Dick button comment about projecting beyond the arena. But you do just need like a little bit of this to open up sometimes in some of the skaters. But again, I think that's also from lack of performing for live audiences to bother to look up. Because also when you're just practicing all the time, who's emoting to nothing? It's hard to simulate.
I did see Yelim Kim actually trying to smile, which she was the shyest of the skaters several years ago. No, she spent some time in Colorado. I don't know if that was the magic solution to her problems, but anyway, I did see more of an effort there. And we know that Yeonju has spent a lot of time in the US as well. Eunsoo has, they do send the girls out and you don't know, is it really for the technical? Because Yeonju's triple axel and quad sow have been as cheated as the day is long. You're sending it to Karen Chen's coach to get you rotation,
right?
Right. But who knows what the real strategy is there. Her other jump's phenomenal here. Yeonju. The other thing, and we talked about it a little bit a year ago when their program announcements came out. These skaters they're drowning in war horses and too much freaking fabric on their dresses. It looks like really dated in like a bad way when they're all doing these classic pieces, but the way that they perform them, it's all very Yuna knockoff, but not having her special quality or packaging or performance, and everyone doing Turandot and Liebestrom and this and that.
Ave Marias and the like.
It just feels heavy to it. Like, look at how much fabric Haein Lee is wearing, like with the sleeves and like everyone doing these. And obviously they're trying to promote a certain style of skating and fabric. And I don't know if it was like a group think or the Federation encouraged or how it all happened, but they're missing some individuality among the skaters where they do tend to look that there's like one similar style. Now in the jump technique, I think that's very good, but I think it hurts the Korean skaters because when you watch them, you think they're so good. Why have they not broken through? But you think it's almost as though they can't figure out which two girls to go with. And they have 17 ranking competitions and burn these skaters out, and then they're not peaking at the Worlds.
Quite frankly, several of them looked burnt out here to me, even though I know that this is not as egregious as when they were doing that 1 year right before Worlds, but it sort of reminded me of, and we'll talk about this because this was a Canada Challenge thing. Remember when Julie and Charlie got injured right before they made the Grand Prix final, I think for the first time, I could be wrong about that. But it's just sort of, yes, I understand the idea of competing more, but competing smart would also be helpful for a lot of these people. And I'm with you, like each one has some very individual characteristics, like Yelim Kim, like that triple is like beyond. Yeonju, we're looking for the triple axel. Haein Lee, I just really enjoy like the effervescence of her skating. Now, there is this skater who I just want to check her name because I'm obsessed. Her name begins with an A.
Ahsun?
Is that how you say it?
I don't know. I
love her.
She's the Star Wars.
Yeah, I would. Yes, like big fan, big fan. But like you're saying, as a federation,
I think she could get the quad toe with that knee bend and that air. that
and has real performance quality that's a little bit more individual. So it's interesting to watch Korea, which is a newer federation in the big scheme of things, as they start to like organize their plan. What they have done is created an insane amount of depth that's solid second level right now. Like that whole second level is chock full of a lot of wonderful Korean skaters. And so that is a big change. I think the number we're talking about, but I think the key to breaking
think
through is
about if they could get 1 or 2 medalists, how big skating would get in Korea.
Yeah. And I think through that
they're bubbling beneath the surface. Like they're right here. They figured out, the coaches had figured out that triple Lutz, triple toe and how to nail it. Imagine if they figure out a quad toe, triple toe for the ladies.
Right.
That would be the game changer, right? Because these Russian quads,
seem capable.
when Anna Shcherbakova goes into the quad Lutz, we are all like this, the quad flip, like, come on. Imagine if they could figure out their own brand of triple, like the way they have triple Lutz, triple toe, quad toe, triple toe, figuring that out.
Yeah. I think it's just a matter of time.
I do think it's a matter of time
to see the growth, because remember, since Kim Yuna, or Yuna Kim rather, we had like a Dobin Choi situation kind of show up occasionally, but now it's like, bam, here are 4 or 5 ladies.
She was close to breaking through.
She really was, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think she's grown, and but she still has that special quality. I mean, when friends text about Korea, they say, "What, Eunsoo's competing?" It's like that's who people want to watch. She has that
X factor. I know it's like such a cliche, but there's a
when
projection.
she's dancing to K-pop on her Instagram. She still has it. You want to watch her.
She has that energy that like shoots lightning bolts out of her fingertips. You know what I mean? It is in the full extension of every.
I think Josh Shin has it in the juniors. I think I messed up her last name, but really special quality there. Enjoy. I was just going to say with Yelim, I think last year at Worlds, you have to wonder, was she burnt out at the last moment? Because she looked like medal potential, right? Until the last moment. Right. I mean, she had everything last season. So, and Junhwa Cha, struggled with the quads here. Overall, I think he looks better this season than he has the last 2.
And he's someone that I felt like this kind of competition is probably good. Do a couple, kind of keep going a little bit, get that stuff ready, because again, he doesn't really have domestic competition.
We named it that they're going to 4 continents as of now. This competition determined 4 continents, but not the Olympics. So I don't know if they're all going to 4 continents right before the Olympics. That would be unusual, but maybe not for Korea. They like to compete them a lot. So
do you know where, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, do you know where 4 continents is?
No, because do you know what competition doesn't seem to matter in an Olympic year?
I know. Yeah, I mean, it can for the next generation.
Because people are going to comment.
I'll forever remember 2014.
I'm like cutting
that 4 continents was like Piper and Paul and Satoko and Sui and Han. Like that's when like that whole next generation showed up.
It's in Estonia, because Europeans are in Estonia and they're keeping the 4 continents in Estonia. Yes, they moved it. They did this in the fall. I remember where I was when this happened. Yeah, it's going to be in Estonia, January 18th to the 23rd.
It's in a neutral continent for the other 4 continents to compete. Okay.
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 So, but
it's overall, like when Dick Button won Europeans.
Yes, right? 1948. Yes.
Yeah. Nice, Dave. And just a couple of thoughts. Sorry, were we wrapped up on Korea?
No, you can.
Oh, no, I mean, because I was going to move us to Italy for a hot second.
Let's go to Italy. Yes.
At this point, we haven't seen the longs, or I was unable to because it was copyright blocked or geo blocked or whatever it was. But we saw a clean from Daniel Grossel with the quad Lutz. Yep.
How does it
and the mouth open?
What is happening?
That's a Pez head. That's a Pez head technique. Yeah.
No, but the force when you jump. I don't understand how this is helpful, and how is he not getting lost? I don't know, but he's rotating 4 times. Okay. And I am not.
Difficult quads. Yeah. It seems something that shouldn't be possible. And if you're achieving that.
Once you see it with him, you can't unsee it. And it's
well, because we always know, especially around the Olympics, they come out with those BuzzFeed articles about
like
beautiful skater moments. Yeah, and it's like there's always one of poor Jeremy like mid in the air. And all these things. It's a centrifugal force. It's amazing what they're doing, but they do create some unusual photos. But
that will be. I mean, He was not in the quad video as a result, okay, of this.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, which I watched all 48 minutes or 45 minutes, whatever it was. It was incredible. It was incredible.
Do you know why I had to do it that way? Because remember, even though we said that these videos are about fun and enjoyment of skating, you leave out an attempt, you leave out a skater, you leave out anything, and it becomes this, and then you get Ethan Burgess tagging Jeremy Abbott or this and that and this and that, and I'm like, oh my God, the last thing I want is Jeremy to be offended that oh my God. So
no, you know who sucks? Are people that tag other people so they can get upset. Like, that's absurd. That's ridiculous. But I found it very inclusive, and especially those earlier ones, because
so more than I expected. So it started out as the idea, and then it just took on a life of its own. And it was,
some of those early attempts, like or Manov's early attempts, I had not seen like
I thought that the Bob Chicks was better than Kurt's.
I agree with you. There were a couple that I was like, I would have ratified this long before his. Yeah. Also,
Fadeyev's was quite good at the '84 Olympics, I have to say. So that I thought was interesting. And Boitano was so close to doing it many times.
Yeah, 100%. I loved seeing all of that.
And Orser doing it, you forget that they practiced it and things like that. So anyway, it was fun to make, but a very big undertaking. Because in my mind, I could hear Scott Hamilton talking at the Olympics about someone landing 2 quads. And then I was like looking for Chen Jiang-Li because I thought maybe it was him. And I was like, and it wasn't, it was Guo Jingjing who did it. And I forgot. And I was like going through all the different possible skaters and I thought I was crazy. And I was asking my friend Clay, I'm like, what is, and then I found it. So anyway, it was, and the interesting thing there is that he threw in the second quad like much later in the competition, like much later in the program. So to find it all, but yeah, it was fun to make. But then I couldn't find a video of Hanyu doing a quad flip. So that like kills my OCD. It's 2 things. One, like when they leave something out, it's like, sometimes people like the Canadians were like yelling that Keegan wasn't in. First of all, Keegan's American. Anyway, in the spread eagle video, like as if he's next to John Curry. You want him to take a seat, okay?
Yeah, amazing.
Like it's like Catherine Healy, John Curry. Where's Keegan?
I know. It's we've always joked about that one meme that is so accurate, where if you go on social media and say I like oranges, and then what are the comments underneath? Well, what's wrong with apples? Yeah.
Anyway,
it was an excellent video, and I can
imagine more of the videos. An easy,
quick one.
If you want more of the videos, watch them. That's what else.
Prove it. Yeah.
So anyway, the Canadians. We got to discuss Canada.
Okay, just one last thing out of Italy. I did. The Matteo Guarise did announce that even though Nicola does not want to compete after this year, he does and will find a new partner.
Who's he going to skate with? Is he going to switch countries?
No idea. All I know is his intention is to continue and find a new partner.
Aliona.
Meanwhile, in Canada.
So many inappropriate jokes going through my head at one time. And I'm just trying
I saw the wheel turning.
And if you want those, I've started doing my own commentary that I would like send to someone like Jonathan or friends. And those are now on Patreon for those members.
I watched some of those recently.
People have asked for years, and usually people that just are friends that I would watch and comment. Adding them along, adding them to the Patreon, one of the bonuses. So
I love that.
So, okay, let's discuss Canada. What did Frank Carroll tell us about Canadians in 2013?
They are not our friends.
They are not our friends. And that is true. Okay. And you know what it is? They have like a group think in Canada, which is like very weird, how they get behind like 2nd and 3rd tier skaters and they have to put their money behind them and they promote them versus all hell, right? But they contradict themselves. And we all are women who are, as Wendy Williams would always say, I'm a woman and it's my prerogative to change my mind. But Canadians do this when they get a skater from another country, especially if it's from America, where they will take a long freaking time to get behind that skater. They have to already have their citizenship and already be behind them. And it's not just having it in the Olympic year. I remember in 2014, Jonathan, whose free dance did you freaking love about Hitchcock?
Piper and Paul, which we had to watch at 4 continents.
Yes, because they didn't send them to the Olympics because they got behind like the Evelyn and Trent of ice dance and sent them to the Olympics because they had promoted them for years.
Right.
Right?
Wrong. Yeah.
But
It really
they
held Piper and Paul back.
But then they waited 8 years and now Canada acts like Piper was born in Canada, right? I mean,
because it's been long enough that like some people forget.
They forget, but they used to not be on the positive end of the Canadian political spectrum.
Yeah.
Is Canada ever going to apologize for them?
Right.
Could PJ please come in the kiss and cry and say, we loved your Hitchcock program?
It belonged at the Olympics. It belonged at that Olympics. Yeah.
Right next to Picasso. We could have had Hitchcock and Picasso together. Okay. Come on. All right. Who is not apologizing to Piper? I mean, come on. This is ridiculous.
How fast did they turn with Keegan?
It took a couple of years, and then now he is the most Canadian, and he plays into it, right? But you know,
because they had other choices at the time. Yeah,
the only ones that they've ever like, I don't know exactly how long it took. If there's an opening right away, they just ignore it, right? So, like Weaver and Pogier, I don't remember exactly how quickly. But the funniest thing is the Canadians, because they had a wide open ice dance situation and they needed a team to help them. They got behind them so much, you would forget that he didn't have his citizenship card. But you watch what they're doing to Deanna and Max, and it's such bullshit. So it's amazingly Canadian in what they do. Okay, if you look at their GOEs from Warsaw, they were getting 3s and 4s on their lifts. You look at it at a domestic competition and they're getting 1s and 2s. You go to any, Lorianne and Theory are the opposite. The judges are helping them and the international judges are not liking them. It's never happens domestically. And I think it's because
it's that biting your nose to spite your face. Yeah. Yes. What are you doing? Yeah.
It's because, and they're still beating Lorianne and Theory, even with the bullshit marks. And they called their death spiral wrong. They do a forward outside death spiral, which is like a really huge deal in pairs. They all watch the practices, they submit the element sheets, and they mark it as a forward inside, and it had to get corrected. How does that happen with the video review when they already watched the practice and have it written down what it is? Like, you think, Jonathan, that there's like something a little bit like fishy going on. And you have to think that they've like put so much behind Evelyn and Trent. All of Deanna and Max's scores are better than Evelyn and Trent. It's interesting.
Yeah, and I as I watched like Deanna do like these inventive moves and every finished polished line, as opposed to me like white knuckling any performance of Evelyn and Trent this year, which had me like holding my breath because I was so afraid of what.
So I have a prediction. And what is about to go down in Canada. Okay. Like, and I just want to talk about like, so we can talk about the shady Canadians the way we love. And we love and love to rib our Canadian friends, right? And they love to rib us. They love to go, how's your president doing? Right? Like 4 years, right? Like, yes.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So, especially when it comes to Deanna, because Evelyn and Trent, we've seen how
implode. Yeah.
If KMT loses the Canadian Nationals, do you think she's going to Worlds?
Oh, I think she's going to be so burnt out. I could see her trying to be talked into it, but I would find that a hard thing to be motivated to do.
Who's going to call her? Julie Marcotte?
Right. No, who's going to convince her? Yeah. On what grounds?
I mean, they really are coached more by Alison Perkis than Bruno at this point. I mean, and right, like what? I don't think she's going. I think she's going to. Right? Should Eric and Vanessa win the Canadian Nationals?
Very possible. I sort of see that happening.
They're going to need Deanna and Max.
Yeah.
To go to the World.
So help me understand what their current situation is.
She can go to the World. She can go to the World. But they didn't send them to the Grand Prix because they weren't eligible for the Olympics. So then they're seen as like a different tier. They're like screwing them, but then, and they've like promoted some of these other teams that are terrible, right? Evelyn and Trent, I mean, how long have we faked this? We have faked this longer than most Canadian ladies. Okay. I mean, this is really ridiculous. And I'm not going to put examples of Canadian ladies because people might tag them. You know who they are. We've watched them on the Grand Prix for years, right?
Yeah.
Think about it, right? Think about some of the Canadian ladies that have gotten sent to Worlds in yesteryear that are behind Gabby Daleman at the Canadian Challenge right now, when it looked like she got lost in the air on that triple Lutz every competition this season. Right. All right. So notice Ted Barton now made it. It was like, Deanna, your lifts are some of the best that I've ever seen in an interview. All of a sudden, Canada is going to get behind them so fast when they need them. You just watch, okay? You just watch and you sit back. Then they're going to be like, isn't it amazing that she came back to skating? They're going to turn her age to being like, it's such an inspiration. You can do.
Well, God, after who's the commentator we want to just like smack upside the head?
Oh, Rod, and he's leaving.
Thank God. Let me show him to the door.
No, Jonathan Byer commenting on the skating lesson 2022 Canadian Figure Skating Championship.
He's so old. That's all he kept talking about with Deanna. He was obsessed with Gogolev's age. He was obsessed with Deanna's age. It was all he could talk about that one.
Jonathan, I love him the most, him and Tracy. Come on, it's my favorite episode of the year.
I love Tracy. Get him out. He can't leave fast enough. Give me the equestrian guy.
Jonathan Byer doing the commentary.
Oh my God, he's so old. He's old, Tracy. He's old.
They are gonna you just watch, okay? If Ted is figuring out, because Ted, I have heard from other coaches, is very strategic and he's competitive. Well, he didn't get himself that gig in Russia by just,
based on the quality of comment or pronunciation, but perhaps on the political ability to make all that happen. Which again, he has a very important place in the sport for that reason.
Listen, you talk to Canadian coaches, they'll be like, what do you want to know about Ted? I'm not saying, my name cannot be attached. They're like...
Megan Duhamel.
Right. Anyway.
It goes to show that like people, though, those positions are powerful because if he sort of gives a seal of approval during Canadian Nations for the Canadian viewers, like it does sort of give you the green light to support Deanna. Mm-hmm. And she's been supportable. There's no reason she wasn't on the Grand Prix this season. That's
you
crazy.
See a fluff piece on Deanna where they talk about her age or her story or their lifts, that Canada is like, all of a sudden like, oh, we need to get behind them now. We need to get behind them now.
We owe it to them because they may go to Worlds. Yeah.
Well, they're not going to owe it to them. They're going to be like, we need to promote them. And you want to know how you know the bullshit? Remember how like Piper and Paul didn't go to 2014 Olympics and then all of a sudden they're like in the top 6 conversation for Boston Worlds 2 years later. Remember when the French didn't go to the 2014 Olympics and then there were the 2015 World Championships? When a federation gets behind you, all of a sudden things can start to happen.
And again, people will claim that judges are now cheating for you or you've made an astronomical rise. Papadakis and Cizeron were amazing back in 2014 and so were Piper and Paul. It was not that they improved. It was not that judges started thinking they were better than they were. It's that judges finally started recognizing the qualities they had. But they weren't able to do that until
there were people that were helping them understand by sitting there and being like, look at how good this is. And the right people behind you, making noise behind the scenes.
Right.
I digress. All of a sudden, maybe those 1s and 2s on their lifts would be the 3s and 4s that they deserved.
That make a huge difference. Yeah.
First lift that Deanna and Max do in that program. Now they've got to do the side-by-side jumps. And I imagine they'll take out the third in the 3-jump combo. I think that'll be a 2-jump combo, I imagine.
Are you talking about the first lift where she just has the one leg up and she's going around like that? That's amazing.
She's like this. You're like, yes, honey. Yes. Okay. Yes.
It's great, but they do like a quasi-acrobatic opening. Was that to the short?
The free.
The free, when it's like da-da-da-da-da. And it was one of those moves that you could see other teams try because it's cool in concept, but like kind of clunky or like a little awkward, but it was very smooth. It was like one of those like Daria Pavlyuchenko like moments, but it had been finessed. It was really nice.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see how the top 3 Canadian teams all going to Zagreb. I mean, we don't have the Grand Prix final, but we do have KMT against Vanessa and Eric and Evelyn and Trent. I mean, a Christmas gift for us, really, right?
Yeah. And again, Deanna should be in Zagreb over Evelyn and Trent, in my opinion.
In your opinion?
Yeah, which is just an opinion.
just an opinion as a member of the free world.
That's right. That's right. But it was interesting here also. I mean, we had seen Gogolev in Warsaw, but he had been that sort of where did he go situation, and it
went
was
to
nice
Raphael, which
Yeah.
and the same thing was happening to him. It happened to like Vivian Lee and Andrew Torgashev and others.
Nice to see him again. And nice to see he's brought the content, he's grown immensely. Like I don't recognize him at all since really last we were seeing him. So tall. Nice quad sow in the free, struggled with it in the short, but
a good jump in the short still.
And seems to be playing it smart. Like, why would we want to see him going for broke right now on all those quads? Like,
I don't enjoy either music selection. I think the free you could change like the Phil Collins of it all, or what we're listening to, the Genesis.
Peter
Gabriel. Sorry.
Yeah.
We could switch that out, right? To better.
Although it did, even though it's not my taste, it did match a couple of the there was like a transition into the triple axel, I think, or something that really matches the music. I think these are Haein programs, and she's someone who listens to the music.
Yeah, the music in the short program that sounds like techno farting. Like
it was a flatulent introduction.
It happens several times where it sounds like farting yet technified. I don't think.
Do you know the show Bob's Burgers? It's like that animated show. Yeah. There's the son that has like this like keyboard sample, and it's just always like, a series of tooting techno sounds.
My nephews would love it.
That's where they found this musical selection.
Gogolev does have one thing against him. And Jonathan, I think they're born this way. I don't think that he can help it, but he suffers from skating while heterosexual. And I don't think he can change that. They're born that way, Jonathan.
Yeah, okay? I don't even try, yeah.
You can't send them to conversions therapy, but
no.
The shoulders, and it's just all. And it's an epidemic, really,
because this is a new frame we're seeing him skate in, and the frame, if someone worked with him to extend and hold a Kolyada-esque sort of position, which is much easier said than done, and that kind of framework would be so stunning. But yeah, I think he can come out of it, just needs the constant work. It would need a choreographer or ice dancer with him at all times, I think, to do it, not just occasionally like Haein checking in. That's a full-time commitment.
Well, what about like the women with Raphael who show up in the Kiss and Cry with Mariah Bell? Like, are they helping? Although you have to wonder. Lee Barkel,
who for the record, Lee Barkel put Gogolev on the ice here.
He's been spending more time with Lee lately.
Okay.
How come Lee looks like he has the better Canadian skaters than the Cricket Club? Like, how come he looks like he's winning at this competition? And why is he gone there? And is it over Gogolev? Like, what all happened there? Whose ego was bruised? And maybe, like, who does the Cricket Club have right now? Who do they have, Jonathan? Like, not
Joseph Fon, who struggles a little bit, who is here also. But
they just don't look like they're raising the talent in the same way. Not where I would go unless I had all of my quads and triples. Unless I needed a little polishing and a little politics and a little Tracy, I just
more of a graduate school, post-grad sort of environment.
Yeah, it's not where I would go to get a camel spin. It's just not where.
It was interesting in the same way Patrick never gravitated towards Brian, but like you would think that they like the presentation of like Brian taking their Canadian star.
I feel like Canada fakes things a lot. Like, did we fake the Cricket Club for a long time? The way, like,
well, I mean, when I think of the Cricket Club now, I think of like that's where Medvedev went. I think of Hanyu. I think of Javi.
And how did Medvedev
I think of Jason?
As Galina would tell you, what did she get? Absolutely nothing. Okay, like. What, the bronze medal that was bought for her? Like, that was ridiculous. Like, come on.
Yeah. But I think of an international scene more than a domestic scene on the Canadian front there, for sure.
But we don't see them raising talent, is the point. Yeah. I just thought it was very interesting to look at here. Being like, what
now, to be fair, you don't know, is that just the talent available to them? But it does seem like some of their stars go elsewhere within Canada. Yeah,
I think Canada has a problem with stars in general, which is why. How do we think some of these Canadian men are going to do at nationals based on the seasons that they're having?
Well, I was curious to get your take. So we've seen, I think Keegan's doing what Keegan needs to be doing. Like,
yeah, she hasn't been great this year.
Yeah, but better, clearly the number one, in my opinion.
Keegan has been showing us his baby on his phone, not necessarily delivering good free programs. Okay, this is what is.
Although I still believe that it's because the music is too fast for the audience and they start clapping too fast and then his timing gets rushed and then it's toast. That's just my personal belief that I adamantly believe, but yet he won't change the music because he must not think that. So now we have suddenly, with the introduction of Gogolev.
He did a Patreon interview with us, Jonathan. It was below zero in Canada, and he was doing an interview outside the entire time, and it made me so freaking nervous. I just
what are you going to luxuriate in a question and spend time with him when you're like, you need to go back inside? Like,
I was like, what is happening? I just don't know. So when he doesn't change the music, I'm like, well, Jonathan, I just don't know if this is the best,
maybe
example.
he was outside when he chose it. Yeah.
Jenny, I'll be like, remember that time that Keegan Messing was outside and it was below zero? What is happening?
Yeah, just casually catching up on a FaceTime call. That's pretty funny. I'm curious though, because now we sort of have Gogolev re-entered the scene in some way, I think. There's like a Gogolev, Nam, Roman. I mean,
Nam is not going. And it seems like he feels that. It just doesn't look like he has that same push behind him for the last.
You almost wondered for 1 second early in the fall when there was a good quad or two when other people were floundering a little bit, Roman especially in the beginning. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know where you are.
Roman is the one. If I were Gogolev, that's the one I'd want to like jump in front of on the warm up. That's the right. I think it's up to Roman, but I think Gogolev is someone they could get behind real fast. Real fast. They could get behind.
So here it seemed, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, or someone in the comments. So there was the quad sow attempt in the short, and then one quad sow attempt in the free. For Steven.
Yes.
Compare that to Roman. Technically has 3 quad sows planned in all.
Yes.
In the short.
But how often is that second quad that he does in combination clean?
Well, sometimes that's the clean one. The first one isn't. So it's always a gamble, I find.
And they never change that order of the program. But I think it's up to Roman. And how is Roman going to stand up to Olympic trials pressure? In the past, he's actually done well at nationals, but the Olympics weren't necessarily on the line. So I'm curious to see if he will rise again at nationals. And he's someone that takes all fall and lots of them to peak at nationals, or is Gogolev like a quiet storm? I don't know. That's going to be really interesting.
That's now kind of like just growing right beforehand. That I don't know. There could be something interesting that happens here. I'm a big fan of Roman skating, but I also am aware that there's some liability you're taking.
Yeah. What was your moment of the week, Jonathan?
Oh my goodness. Oh, crap. I need to think about this ahead of time. It had nothing to do. I'm devastated by the Grand Prix, so that's upsetting. Is it something in Italy? Is it something in Korea? Oh, why don't we say Yelim Kim's triple Lutz, triple toe? Is it a Lutz toe, right?
Yeah. Lutz
yes.
toe.
That combo, unbelievable. Combination of her of her triple, but also, and I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong, the Korean skater whose name begins with an A. I just always need to. Yes, I think the world of her, and I'm excited to see what she continues to do.
Well, I'm going to go with seeing Trusova do a cantilever with a small dog. And where was Peta during this situation? with a small dog and a broken foot. Okay, in Red Square. In Grozny Ploshchad. Like, what is happening here? Allegedly working the quad Lutz, trying to get the others back, keeping it interesting for Russian nationals.
Doing a Paris program with her dog is great. Come on, get like little dog skates with death spiral. It's not allowed.
It's not allowed, Jonathan. It just made me go like, what is happening? What is happening?
For the dog. Do you remember there was a really funny Olympic meme that came out where they actually replaced Aliona with like a giant orange cat, and Bruno was like doing a death spiral with this.
I never understood why that was funny, but it was sent to me a billion times. Okay.
Well, I don't think someone did it because it had anything to do with Aliona. I think it's just funny to see a cat doing skating. So I think it was as simple as, look how funny this looks.
You know how many people sent me that damn meme? Okay, do you know how every time I'd be like,
for me, it's the one with Tanya and Nancy at the 94 things, and it's like my summer plans.
oh, that's true.
Yeah. I was like, oh yeah, I didn't see this one yet. Thanks for being the 800th person that has sent this to me in the last 24 hours. But I like it.
Holy Ninja looks sexy, everyone.